All right. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Good Burger, home of the Good Burger. May I take your order? I'd like to start this episode by talking about two things. One, I have had breakfast today, so hopefully we won't have any technology issues. Two, we're going to be adding mixed numbers today, and really there's not any new information today. We're just going to be taking things we've learned in previous lessons and kind of putting them all together. So I can add mixed numbers with and without models. So when you add mixed numbers, the same way you add fractions. There's a catch to that, though, is that sometimes you'll need to regroup the final sum into a new mixed number. And regrouping is just converting the parts from an improper fraction into an extra whole number with the mixed number. So here's a model of that. You'll notice here that in my solution here, a little bit tough to see, is 1 5/3. That's one whole, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 pieces. Each of those pieces is 1/3 of a whole. Right? You'll notice here it takes 3 pieces to make up a whole. Right? And so what we're doing here, right, is we're going to be regrouping. We're going to be trading in things that make a whole, and so that our answer becomes not improper and just a mixed number. And so what we're doing here, right, is we're taking these 3/3 that make up a whole, and we're going to kind of separate them out of the 5/3. Right? So this is what I'm doing here. So now what I have is one whole. I have a second whole, right, and you'll recall that this particular one was the one that was cut into 3, right? So here's my second whole, so 1, 2 wholes, and then I'm left with just 2 pieces out of 3, so 2 2/3. What this looks like without a model, right? Let's take the problem 4 9/4. So what I'm doing here, right, is I'm trying to convert this to a mixed number. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to worry only about this 9/4 part first. So 9/4. How many groups of 4 are in 9? Right? You're basically doing 9 divided by 4. So in this one alone, right, I could make 4/4, 4/4, and 1/4. Because 4 plus 4 plus 1 gives me my 9/4. Right? Well, the nice thing is, right, this is a whole, this is a whole, this stays a fourth, and if I put that all together with my original 4 wholes, right, what I end up with is 4, 5, 6 wholes and 1/4. Right, 6 wholes and 1/4. This particular step is crucial in terms of making our answers the most correct that they can be. Right? This should be a review from earlier in this topic, not new information. Let's highlight these 3 steps. Again, you will not hear new information. Step 1 for adding mixed numbers. Make equivalent fractions with a common denominator. Not new information. Step 2, add fractions together first. We did that previously in this topic. Not new information. Add whole numbers. You've been doing that for most of your lives. That's not new information. Finally, regroup the improper fraction to make a new whole number, right? Simplify if necessary. The regrouping piece here is making improper fractions into mixed numbers, which we also did earlier this topic. So here's an example. Here's an example. I have maybe I have 2 5/6 plus 3 3/4. And my first step is to find a common denominator. You can do this in a couple of ways. The first option would be your orange best friend. The second option would be to list the multiples of the denominators. And you could do that by either skip counting in your head out loud, or writing them down. And that's what I'm going to do. I'm actually going to write them down. So I need the multiples of 6 and of 4, because those are my denominators, and I want a common denominator. So skip count with me. 6, 12, 18, 24, 30, 4, 8, 12, 16, 20, 24. Notice that they have, in this list, 2 things in common. I'm going to choose the lower of the 2 because that makes my process more efficient. So, right, how do I get from sixths to twelfths? Well, 6 times 2 is 12. So whatever I do to the denominator, I must do to the numerator. 5 times 2 is 10. How do I get from 4 to 12? Well, that would be 3 groups. And so 3 times 3 is 9. So I have 2 and 10 twelfths plus 3 and 9 twelfths. Let's do our actual adding. We're going to start with the fractions. So 10 plus 9 is 19 twelfths. Notice I only added my numerators. And if I add my whole numbers, I get 5. Right? So I have 5 and 19 twelfths. And I'm definitely going to need to regroup because that's an improper fraction. And so here in my thought bubble, you'll see that 19 twelfths, how many groups of 12 are in 19? That's 1. What's left over when I take 12 out of 19? Well, that would be, let's see here, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19. That would be 7. Right? So what I have here, right, what I have here is, let's bring everything down. I have 5 wholes. I've taken my 19 twelfths and I've split it into 12 twelfths and 7 twelfths. Well, we know that the same number top and bottom, right? Same number here, right, makes 1 whole. And so 5 plus 1 gives me 6 and 7 twelfths. 12 twelfths. Let's try one more. Possibly. One more together, and then I'll let you try 2 on your own. So let's do number 3 because it has the most different denominators that we've seen so far. So we need a common denominator for halves and fifths. So 5, 10, 15, 20, 2, 4, 6, 8. Oh, I'm going to choose 10. So this equals 5 and something out of 10. This equals 4 and something out of 10. How did I get from 2 to 10? Well, that was times by 5. So I better do 1 times 5, which is 5. How did I get from 5 to 10? Well, that was times 2. So 2 times 2 is 4. All right. 4 tenths plus 5 tenths is 9 tenths. 4 plus 5 is 9, and that is our answer. Why don't you pause the screen now and try the next 2. You'll notice in both of these other examples I have chosen to use the lowest common denominator, right, the LCD. If you used 24 here, or 36, or 48, you're definitely going to have a little bit more simplifying work. If you use something like 16 here or 24, again, you're going to have some simplifying work. These answers, 6 and 1/12 and 8 and 1/8, are the most correct answers you could have. What I do want to talk about, really kind of the stickler here that kids get hung up on, is this regrouping piece. Right? What a lot of students will do is they'll forget the whole number that they started with, and they will try to tell me this, right? 5 and 13 twelfths equals 1 and 1/12. And they're like partially right, because 13 twelfths does equal 1 and 1/12. But you cannot forget about this whole number, and so that is not correct. All right. Pause the screen and try this example in your notes. Sometimes drawing a picture is helpful. I immediately knew that 1/2 of a dollar here is 2/4, is 2/4, and so I made that switch there. Then I noticed that if I take one of my quarters here and I just move it over here, I've now created 4/4, right? 4/4. So I have $5 plus $1 plus 4/4 plus 1/4 for a total of 7 1/4 dollars. All right, your next steps will be to log into the practice book and complete this independent practice buddy. If you have questions, come and see me, and have a great day.